Welcome into It's Just the Show. I'm your host, Jay Stone, and with me always is Cory Champney.
Hey, number 4.
That's right. Episode number 4. Welcome in. We'll be covering a few topics today, coming in after episode 3 with our interview with Kevin Ellison. What'd you think about that, Cory?
You know, I will say this. Kevin Ellison, he was a part of one of the greatest upsets in college football history, and no one talks about it. But you know what? We talked about it.
Yes, we did.
And I'm glad that I'm able to call that guy a friend, because if you don't know him outside of sports, he is a very down-to-earth guy, one of the nicest guys you ever meet, loves his kids, loves fishing, which we didn't really get into with him. Maybe next time, but
we're hoping to have him back.
Yes.
I do believe we'll be able to touch on some fishing.
Oh, yeah. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever had your heart broken?
Ugh. Yes, sir. The Georgia Bulldogs really know how to break a man's heart.
Well, so it wasn't just a girl?
No. Ain't no woman ever broke my heart like the Georgia Bulldogs, buddy.
Ain't no woman can take my heart out and stomp on it. I'll tell you that much.
I think we should go through our top 3.
Top 3?
Yeah, top 3 of
Okay.
our biggest heartbreaks in all sports.
Oh, yeah.
You feel like you could do all sports? Or do you wanna stick?
You know what? It's going to have to be all sports. I think mine's just going to be baseball and football, I think.
Yeah.
Because I do have some heartbreaks in basketball, but they don't hit me the same
Right.
as I got 3 right away. But
What you got? Number 3, lead us off.
we'll go one at a time. My number 3 is going to be a particular Super Bowl.
Mm.
And it was the New York Giants, the football Giants, against the New England Patriots. And it was that Super Bowl where they were coming off, the Patriots were coming in, and they were undefeated. Super Bowl, what is that? XLII 42?
42.
42. Super Bowl 42, it happened February 3rd, 2008, University of Phoenix Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. It was the Giants and the Patriots, the 10-6 Giants against the 16-0 New England Patriots. The game itself was actually a pretty good game. It was low scoring, 17-14. So a story behind this game. I was in school. I was in Florida. And I was working at a theme park, and it wasn't the one that you think of when you think of Orlando. It was the other one.
The other one.
Yeah, and I was getting razzed by people because they knew I was a Patriots fan. They're like, "You're not gonna go undefeated. They're not gonna do it. Tom Brady sucks. Oh, the Giants have the number 1 defense. They're gonna shut them down." And I heard all the flack, and so I'm going into this game. I'm nervous, because their playoff games in this year were very close.
Mm-hmm.
I know they beat the Chargers in the AFC Championship. I don't remember who they faced in the divisional round, but I was nervous. And this was before. This game just hurt. You see the pain in my face.
Ouch.
People can't see it, but so I guess how I'll do it is I'll just kind of run down the teams, and then I'll run down the game.
Yeah.
So let's start with the Patriots first. Of course, they had the GOAT. They had Tom Brady. The running back was Lawrence Maroney. Randy Moss and Wes Welker were the receivers. They had Benjamin Watson, a Georgia Bulldog, as their tight end. Logan Mankins was one of their offensive guards. Their defense was pretty good. Listen to these names: Vince Wilfork, Richard Seymour, Mike Vrabel, Teddy Bruschi, Adelaide Thomas, Brandon Merriweather, Asante Samuel, Rodney Harrison. So that's a pretty good team. Of course, they're coached by Bill Belichick. On the Giants side, it's Tom Coughlin coach team. Tom Coughlin's a great football coach. The quarterback is, of course, Eli Manning. Their running back was Brandon Jacobs. Their receiver was Amani Toomer and Plaxico Burress.
Eli Manning, the Dragon Slayer.
Yeah. Kevin Bosch was their tight end. But this defense, listen to this: Michael Strahan, Barry Cofield, Fred Robbins, O.C. Umenora. I probably butchered that. Reggie Torbor, Antonio Pierce, Aaron Ross, Corey Webster, James Butler, Gabriel Wilson. Okay, so this game, the Patriots are coming in. They have the chance to do something that only one other team has done. What was it, the 72 Dolphins?
The undefeated seasons?
Yeah.
Yeah, 17-0, that'd be the Miami Dolphins, 72.
So they're going to be better than Miami. I think the Miami Dolphins were 16-0. So this was a chance for them to be the all-time greatest team ever. Ever. And I ran down those names. I mean, that is a very stacked team. So I'm going into this game and I'm thinking they could win, but what scared me was that defense that the Giants had. And so these two teams played the last game of the year, and that's where Brady and Moss both broke their records in this game. And that was a tough game too, but they won by, I think, like 10 points or something. So I said, you know what, that could play a factor because the Giants could come in, and the Giants were the number 5 team coming in the playoffs. They won some big games, and they beat Green Bay, which surprised everybody. So I'm sitting there, and the game is starting off, and it's so slow. And finally, they get a 14-10 lead, right? And they drop back to pass, and they have Eli, and just by some miracle, he breaks out of that tackle, runs a little bootleg, throws the ball to some hack named David Tyree, who can't even catch a ball without using the support of his helmet, and comes down with it. And I'm sitting there, and no, that's not a catch. You can't do that. And the referees obviously don't know how to call football because they said, no, that's a catch. All day long, that's a catch.
Never hit the ground.
Never hit the ground. But if you read the NFL rule book, it says you cannot do that. You can't use your helmet to catch a ball.
Ooh.
Or I think they changed the rule after the Super Bowl. But anyways, New England had a chance to come back. And what did they do? They throw this long pass down the sideline to Randy Moss, and it gets knocked down. And I
had no shot at it.
But then I have to go into work the next day. So I was like, nope, forget that. I called out sick.
I'm not having it.
I was the boss, so I could do that, you know.
Right.
But no, I called out sick. I said, no, I'm going to. And I think I had some people I had to train that day or whatever. And I said, sorry, but no, I'm not dealing with this. I am not going into work dealing with all these other college kids that are going to razz me that aren't even Giants fans. They just hated the Patriots that much.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sick. I was literally sick to my stomach. I felt like I had food poisoning that next day. That's how sick I was because we didn't just lose the Super Bowl. We lost a perfect season. We lost a chance to beat a team that people would talk about for years and years and years down the road because it's so hard in any sport to go undefeated. And in the NFL, it's very difficult. So
it's literally only been done one time.
Yeah, and this one hurts. But it's number 3 because I think that they went on to win more Super Bowls after this. They won 3 more after this. So it hurts, but the sting isn't as bad as it could be.
Right.
But, yeah, it's just the memory of – and then so the next day I go into work after I called out sick. They said, oh, yeah, you were real sick, weren't you? I said, no, I was. I was sick because I had the anxiety of having to come in and face you guys.
Right.
I had the anxiety of watching my team lose. And it wasn't just like they got stomped. It was such a close game that I was worn out by the time that game ended. Like mentally, physically, I was worn out because it was a roller coaster ride. And if you look at it from an outside perspective, it was a great game. It really was. It was a very good defensive game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there were times where the offense showed up in there too, but it was just one of those games where it's draining. And every single one of New England's Super Bowls are like that. Every single one of their Super Bowls are close. I don't think they had a Super Bowl where it wasn't close, you know? But I'm just like, I was just so drained.
Yeah, if those games are blowouts, you know, Adam Vinatieri never gets the reputation he got. That era of kickers where New England was winning Super Bowls, the Colts kickers, the New England's kickers, those guys will go down as legends.
Yeah. I don't know, like, I would have this one ranked higher if, like, New England never won another Super Bowl after that. This would probably be, like, number one.
Right.
But because they went on later on, like, if you would ask me this when this game, like, a couple years after this game happened, oh, for sure, number one. But, yeah, no, still hurts thinking about it. But the sting is off a little bit because,
Right.
you know, Tom Brady gave so much more to New England, and, you know, people can hate on Tom Brady all they want, but he did a lot of great things in the sport, and he carries himself a certain way.
Sure.
But I think it made him better. It made him want it even more, you know. And a couple years later, they faced the Giants again and again lost because Eli Manning just. But
The
you know,
Dragon Slayer.
yeah, they would go. They would go on to win more Super Bowls. But yeah, that's my number 3. So how about you? What's your number 3?
Number 3 is probably going to come as a surprise to some people that I'm talking about this Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl, but Super Bowl 33 was my first heartbreak. And
The Broncos?
the Broncos absolutely slapping the Atlanta Falcons.
Wow.
So in 1998, the Denver Broncos go into Super Bowl 32, and Terrell Davis breaks the record for most touchdowns scored in a Super Bowl. They absolutely rushed the ball, and John Elway, all he did all night was hand off that football. He hardly had to throw. Well, the next year comes along, and Atlanta has one of the best run defenses in the NFL. The 98-99 season, Super Bowl 33, I'm 9 years old. This is the first time in my life I can remember my parents letting me stay up past 9 o'clock. And it was Sunday night. You know, I got school the next morning. That's kind of a big deal at 9. And at the time, I didn't really have the influence to just pick one team. So I was excited that my AFC team was playing my NFC team. I hadn't had enough years under my belt to be a diehard fan. But going into the game, I thought it was going to be close.
Yeah.
And then John Elway goes in there and absolutely slices and dices the Atlanta Falcons secondary. Like, I think that some of those players were asleep at the snap of the ball. 34-19 was the final. Atlanta could not move the ball on offense. Chris Chandler never looked more washed up. There was no need for a run defense in that game because once they realized they could throw the football, it was on. So January 31st, 1999 was my first ever heartbreak. I can remember sitting in the living room, and the couch didn't face the TV because the couch was there before we had a TV.
Yeah.
So the TV was an afterthought. And I can remember sitting on the arm of the couch and watching the TV and feeling so disappointed in this game, how it was not really competitive.
Yeah.
It was not entertaining. But I refused to go to bed, and I refused to give up hope that the Falcons were going to make a comeback, and they never did. It never happened. John Elway hosts his second Super Bowl trophy and rides into the sunset, into retirement, and rides into the Hall of Fame. You know, all respect due to John Elway. He deserved every bit of it. The Denver Broncos were a better team, but I'll never forget that first feeling in my gut of disappointment going, man, this was not supposed to happen this way. This was supposed to be highly competitive. These are supposed to be the two best teams in the pros.
Yeah.
I didn't quite wrap my mind around it, but feeling that bottomless pit for the first time before I hit double digits kind of set me up to be okay with the early 2000s UGA seasons and Mark Richt, you know, those 9-10 win seasons, barely making bowl games but never being in championship contention. It made it softer after watching your expectations just melt and flow away in front of you.
And, you know, coming off of, I don't know if you remember, but that NFC Championship game where they went in and they faced the 14-2 Vikings with Randall Cunningham and Randy Moss and Chris Carter, and they won that game. But that game was such a roller coaster. I remember because I was in 7th grade with this Super Bowl, and it was like everybody was talking about John Elway and the Broncos. Oh, we're going to stomp them. We're going to stomp them. And I was the guy that was like, I don't know, man. John Elway's hungry.
You watch that game.
Hungry.
That's two different caliber football teams.
Oh, yeah.
The Broncos were on another level. Shannon Sharp, Terrell Davis, John Elway, not any chumps.
You know what the difference was? John Elway took a career of getting his hind end spanked, as they say here in the South, his rear end or hind end, spanked in the Super Bowls and in playoffs. He was hungry.
And
he knew that this was it for him.
And he made room
years.
at the table.
Oh, yeah. Dan Reeves, good old Southern boy, but he got taste my grits. He got slapped.
It really is poetic how Super Bowl 51 ended with Tom Brady's comeback, and for the Atlanta franchise as a whole to fold that way.
Yeah.
That Super Bowl 33, they never stood a chance.
Yeah.
And Super Bowl 51, they had that in the bag and just crumbled. I mean, you had Arthur Blank on the sideline ready to hoist the trophy.
Oh, yeah.
And just watching his entire life just fall down, crumble right in front of him.
I will say that this Super Bowl that you're talking about, what, 33?
33.
The Tim Dwight kickoff was pretty much the only
It was it.
bright spot,
That
right?
was it.
Yeah. I mean,
it was
that
like, oh, man, we're going to be in this game. Lo and behold, the only place where we played better than was special teams.
Now, this was the Dirty Bird Falcons, right?
Yes.
Where Jamal Anderson did his little Dirty Bird, thing.
But see, of those 19 points, 7 of them special teams.
Yeah. But I remember this Falcons team because they were dirty birds. They played that down and dirty football. They were a very exciting team to watch, but no one expected them to get past the Vikings that year.
Absolutely not.
Everybody thought it was going to be Denver and Minnesota.
Yeah.
And that game was a surprising game. It really was.
It really was. And just a side note, another exciting game that went between Minnesota and Atlanta in the playoffs was that Vic game.
Oh, yeah.
That was something else.
Yeah.
The throwing as he's falling out of bounds, the long run,
Yep.
not being able to be sacked.
Yep.
So what lands at number 2 for you?
I think this one's going to surprise a lot of people that, my number one college football team is always Georgia, and then Notre Dame and UCF. That's the way it falls. But when I was in college, 2005, who was the top college football team at that time? A dynasty.
USC?
Yeah. It was the Pete Carroll USC. So
yep. That's Reggie Bush.
this
Matt Leinart.
is the Bush push game
with
with USC and Notre Dame. And this was a good Notre Dame team and the number 1 ranked USC team, which this was the Matt Leinart-led USC team because they had Carson Palmer, and that's right when the dynasty started, right at the end of Carson Palmer's run. And then Pete Carroll came in, and it was Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush. But this game, it was the 5-0 USC Trojans against the 4-1 Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And the head coach for USC was Pete Carroll, and the head coach for Notre Dame was Charlie Weiss.
Really?
Who was the OC for the first couple Patriots Super Bowls under Bill Belichick. This was actually in South Bend. It was a home game for Notre Dame. And so they came out and they were wearing those green uniforms and everything. Like, they were ready for this game. And it was actually all Notre Dame. The Bush push came like at the final drive, and Reggie Bush Matt Leinart got held up in the end zone. He gets held up, and Reggie Bush comes in and gives him a little push in. And now they run that play now. I think it's called the brotherly push. Philadelphia runs it all the time. It was actually a really good game. If you sit down and watch, the final score was 34-31. So Notre Dame had the lead. Notre Dame was the 9th ranked team coming into this, and USC was number 1. I remember where I was. I was at home watching it with my dad, and his partner is a Notre Dame alumni. So Brady Quinn was the quarterback. He was coming in like a man on fire.
He was highly drafted, too. That was a flop.
Oh, yeah. Jeff Samardzija was the receiver. He was the white boy receiver that was catching everything, but then went on to be a pitcher in the major leagues.
Yeah,
for the Cubs.
what?
Yeah. John Carlson was their tight end. Anthony Fasano, who went on to play with the Dolphins, he was their tight end. They had Darius Walker as their running back, and actually Derek Landry was one of their defensive tackles. Victor Abiamari was a linebacker. He played with the Eagles. Trevor Laws, Mike Richardson, linebacker Maurice Crum Jr., David Burton, Tom Zibikowski. That was the Notre Dame team. The USC team, stacked. Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush. Let's see, the
Is that
receivers.
Dwayne Jarrett still there?
Yes.
Yeah, Dwayne Jarrett was the cheat code on NCAA football.
Yes,
You
he
just
was.
throw it in his direction 20 yards down the field, and he's going to catch it. He was like the Randy Moss
But
of
not
the
only
game.
that, man, listen to this coaching staff. Pete Carroll, Lane Kiffin was your offensive coordinator.
Of course he was.
Ken Norton Jr. was the linebackers coach. Steve Sarkisian was the quarterback coach. That's crazy.
Everything Sarkisian touches turns to gold.
This Trojans team would go on to win the national championship, but the thing was, this game was so back and forth, and it was like, at first, you thought USC was going to win this game because they had the lead, and then Notre Dame started coming back, and they looked great in the second half, and they were going to win this game. They were going to win this game, I'm telling you. Then they had that drive, and Matt Leinart will tell you, I've heard him in interviews say that he hates Notre Dame. He hated everything about Notre Dame.
Right.
You know, well, we hate you too, Matt Leinart. I'm glad your NFL career didn't pan out.
Boom shakalaka.
They are who we thought they were. Couldn't even beat the Bears, man. Anyways, but I think the reason why this game hurt so much was because everybody wanted Notre Dame to win this game because everybody hated USC. They were that number one dynasty team, kind of like how people hate Alabama now.
Right.
And always want to see Alabama lose. They wanted Notre Dame to win this game. This game was hyped. For like 2-3 weeks. It was hyped. It was on ESPN. It was a night game, so it was like that Saturday night prime time, college football on ESPN. And, man, I just remember Brady Quinn. This was him just slinging it all over the place, making guys look good.
Yeah, he looked like Tom Brady that night.
Tom Zibikowski was just hitting guys hard, knocking balls out of, Dwayne Jarrett's hands. And I'm telling you, man, Reggie Bush, he'll tell you he didn't have the best game in this game. He did not. I mean, he had, I think, the week before against Fresno State, he had like 500-something all-purpose yards.
Yeah.
In this game, they completely shut him down. Matt Leinart actually looked good in this game.
He had to if they were going to compete.
USC was a factory for quarterbacks. It was Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart, Mark Sanchez. Those guys were coming out of there. They were a running back factory. Notre Dame produced players, but like what we talked about last week with Kevin, they always had that academic, you had to have academics to go play there. You get the prestige of playing for Notre Dame, but you can't take Easy Bake Oven 101 classes,
Yeah, you're going to have to be looking for a career in something special if you're going to Notre Dame.
And you never really hear about Notre Dame players getting DUIs. You don't hear about fighting. You don't hear about any of that type of stuff because of the academic standard. I think it's a little bit lax now. I mean, they still have it, but it's probably not as big now. But this game hurt too because I just remember everybody being so upset about it. Even the people that weren't Notre Dame fans, they wanted Notre Dame to win this game so bad because they wanted USC knocked out of that top spot.
Mm-hmm.
And if you lose to a number 9 team and you're number 1, boop, you're out of that top spot. Yeah. And Notre Dame would have moved up into the top 5.
And for our younger listeners, this is before the playoffs.
Yes.
So if you weren't undefeated when you went into your conference championship, you could pretty much kiss a natty goodbye.
Oh yeah, and they had the AP poll and the coaches poll, and then I think they had the BCS.
But they had the AP poll and the coaches poll.
Oh, it was just AP and coaches. So USC is number 1 in AP and coaches coming into this, and Notre Dame is number 9 with AP and coaches coming into this. And the thing that made this even more special was this is a rivalry game. USC and Notre Dame, this is a rivalry for the jeweled shillelagh, whatever that is. I guess it's just a shillelagh with green diamonds on it. I mean, but it was so... This game just always sticks out. And this is one of those college football games like you'll always remember because it was one of those that was a big deal. Yeah, it wasn't for a championship or anything like that, but it was almost like USC was playing for their championship lives. You know what I'm saying? Because if they didn't win this game, you could forget about winning that natty that they won in 2005, that same year. You forget it. Notre Dame would have knocked them out.
Absolutely. 100%. I think that while we're on the topic, expanding to a 12-game playoff is genius.
Yes.
The bowl games are losing their luster because of this generation of player is already getting free stuff.
Yeah.
And it's okay. They don't need your like Kevin was saying last week, they don't need your GoDaddy watch that doesn't work. They don't need your cheap shoes. They got a Ferrari or a Land Rover already.
What was that, the whack bag that they got?
He said the whack bag. It wasn't, a cool bag of stuff. It was whack. There was nothing good in that bag.
I mean, you played in the GoDaddy Bowl. I mean,
Right.
GoDaddy was what, a thing that helped you make web pages or something like that?
they were a web page developer.
Yeah. Okay, so what are you going to get? What are you going to get from them?
I mean, GoDaddy went all out. They sponsored a Super Bowl. They sponsored Danica Patrick's race car.
I was about to say the Danica Patrick commercials. Yeah,
Absolutely. They had a good run at the beginning of the internet, but there's a lot of competition on the internet. We know that being podcast
But they couldn't
hosts.
even afford to give them working watches. Come on.
Yeah.
But I will say this, like, this era of college football infuriated you.
Yeah.
And then the whole BCS, let's put it in a computer and see what the computer shoots out.
Exactly.
And it was based off of, you could go undefeated but lose or win a lot of close games to teams that weren't ranked or whatever, and you wouldn't be the number one team. It was so infuriating. You could be the number one team and the number two team beat the number three team and you get knocked down to number two.
So the BCS only participated with postseason stuff. They didn't start ranking teams in the regular season like coaches and AP pool do all season long. They didn't start till the later weeks of the season, and it was from 98 to 2013.
Okay, that's what it was. I think it was like the second half of the season, or like the last couple of weeks. There was a cutoff, and I forget what it was. Maybe it was like week 10 or week 12 or something like that. Started the BCS. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So the AP and the coaches decided who was number one, and then like the BCS would reset it.
Yep.
A lot of times they kept the top 5 teams the same.
Yeah.
But maybe number 2 would move to number 1, and number 1 would drop to number 2. And
your original ranking algorithm.
But the reason why this one is number 2 is because this one, I was mad about this for days. And I would talk to my buddies. They're all like, yeah, USC, there's some expletives thrown out there.
Of course.
And I hated Matt Leinart.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark Sanchez, didn't like him either. I'm glad he's known as Butt Fumble. From this day forward, he'll always be Butt Fumble. But I never liked Matt Leinart because he was cocky, he was arrogant, he was a good-looking dude, and he made me mad.
Right.
And the fact that the play is considered illegal in college football, but yet it's technically not, but it is. It's like the helmet catch. It's one of those that they could have called it if they wanted to, but it will always go down, I think, as if you look at the greatest college football games, non-championship college football games, it might be a top 10 regular season college football game of all time. And it just goes to show you that any day of the week, the number one team could be knocked off. And this was no slouch Notre Dame team. You're talking top 10.
Yep.
And they had some players on that team. And they had guys that were coming out, like Kevin against Georgia. They're getting ready to knock off a top team.
Yeah, they were ready.
They were coming out fired up. It was a home game. They were in their home stadium, and they said, you're not going to come in here and beat us and get an easy win.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's number 2 because I was mad for days about this.
I know
days.
that feeling. God, I know about that
because we
feeling.
just wanted the UCF to knocked off their perch.
Mm-hmm. Number 2 for me, we're going to go to COVID year. I hate it, but
oh, yeah.
This was the low light of my COVID year, so it couldn't have been that bad, right?
Yeah.
The NLCS baseball. It was a rough year for sports in 2020. No fans. Everything's on TV.
Yeah.
And the Braves make the NLCS. It was a good series. Game 7 at Globe Life Park. And I'll tell you, I've been to Globe Life. It's right across the street from Jerry's house in Arlington. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's no apartments. There's no residential areas. It is in what used to be a big field. And I feel like they did it there because it was easy to distance themselves. It's out of town. There's nothing in that area. There's a reason they're not in downtown Dallas. And Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas, there were only 10,000 people in attendance.
Wow.
So you're talking about a field that holds double that. So we're talking into COVID year, so they're starting to let fans come.
So this was when they were playing, for people that don't remember, they were playing in front of cardboard cutouts,
Yes.
and they were putting in crowd noise
Yes.
to make it sound like there was people there, but they really weren't, and it was people that were sending in pictures of themselves. You sent money in a picture, and they would put your actual, like, cut out in the audience to make it look like you're there.
Yep.
It was ridiculous.
And they left when they started letting fans come back. They would use those cardboard cutouts to keep separation between fans. So Game 7. Game 7s are always intense.
Oh yeah.
Playoffs in Major League Baseball, October, it's a whole vibe. It's a whole thing. I've taken people to playoff games that could care less about baseball and leave the stadium just yearning for more because baseball in October is like nothing else.
Oh yeah.
This was a 3.5-hour baseball game. And I can remember I started watching it at Big Daddy's. I had just started dating my now wife, then girlfriend at the time. And we were at Big Daddy's hanging out. I'm the DD, so my emotions are getting all over me. I've got nothing keeping me relaxed.
Yeah.
Ozuna jumps out, top of the first inning, and he singles to left. Acuna scores. And the second inning, Swanson homered, solo shot. We're up 2-0. I'm starting to feel good about this. You got to put runs in on this Dodgers team. Back in 2020, they were really good offensively.
Yeah.
Third inning rolls around, and Smith singles to center. Turner scored, and Muncy scored. Those boys are turning at the bases. And, tie ball game. I'm getting nervous. Fourth inning, Riley, he singles to center, and Albie scores. All right, we're up 3-2, boys. We can hold this. We're halfway through the game now, going into the fifth. We hold her down in the fifth. We don't score either. Sixth inning comes out. Hernandez, solo shot, tie ball game, 3-3. All right, now I'm starting to get nervous. Nothing's gone right all year long, man. We just need something. It's like the Braves are close. The Dogs are playing well, even though it's a short season. Give me this. Yeah. And then in the bottom of the seventh, one of my least favorite players, Bellinger, hits a 400-foot bomb to right field. It's a moonshot. And they go up 4-3 at the bottom of the seventh, and we just could not produce any offense after that. Acuna went 0 for 3. He scored once, but that was off a walk. It was not a good game for anybody. We only had 3 hits the whole game. Ozuna, Swanson's home run, and Riley. And all those hits scored runs. Yeah. So if we could have got the bat on the ball, we're going to have back-to-back World Series victories here.
Yeah.
And I hated that Dodgers team. They were so good. They reminded me of the 90s Yankees franchise, that dynasty. Mm-hmm. I felt like they just went out and dropped a bunch of money on the best players. They were not with good teams. Some of them were with good teams like Mookie Betts, but they went out and spent a fat paycheck, and I hate nothing more than getting beat by an all-star team. Yeah. When you've got a team of really good players that you've taken from farm league, like Swanson and Albies, who played in Rome, and Acuna, who we signed at 17 years old, and then we bring him up, and bam, AA looks like a genius.
What made 2021 so much sweeter, though, was that beat the Dodgers to get there.
Yes.
And the Acuna Grand Slam. Was
youngest player to ever hit a Grand Slam.
That was an ALC or NLCS, too, wasn't it?
NLDS.
It was a
division game, yep. 20-year-old, second inning Grand Slam, gave the Braves an early 5-run lead that propelled them to a 6-5 victory against the Dodgers in the NLDS.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing. Like, I remember that, but this 2021, it was heartbreaking. It really was.
Absolutely.
But the 2021 season was
it made it sweet. Like you were saying earlier about, the perfect season stung, but, was it 3 out of the next 5 years y'all won Super Bowls?
Yeah, there was a little bit of a gap because the next Super Bowl they went to, they lost to the Giants too, and then after that it was like boom, 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 boom.
Boom, boom.
Yeah.
Right.
But with this one, it was like this was the start. Like 18 was kind of the start of the baby Braves.
Yep.
Acuna and Albies. But then this is when you really started to see it come together. You're talking a lot of the players that they had in 21 came back.
Yep.
But the thing that made 21 different was that there was no Acuna. He went out with a knee injury.
You got a guy that's looking at an MVP season, and he goes down. What are we going to do now?
You picked up Soler from Kansas City. You picked up Jock Peterson, who was, I think, with the Cubs at the time. You picked up Eddie Rosario from the Twins. And these 3 guys helped lead this team with Ozzie Albies and Freddie Freeman and Austin Riley, Max Fried, Charlie Morton, and Charlie Morton breaks his leg.
Right.
A line drive. And he finishes the inning. I think he pitched to 2 more batters after that. Finishes the inning, and they're like, oh, you have a broken leg.
Hey, he's like, well, I guess I'm done for the game, but I did my part.
As much as this game hurt, and I can see why it's number 2, because, like I said, the next year, you end up having one of the highest moments of your sports career.
Absolutely.
By them winning the World Series.
And I got to go to Game 5 against the Astros.
Yeah.
We lost that game. However, Adam Duvall hits a grand slam in the bottom of the first. You want to talk about getting loud.
Yeah.
Truist Park was jumping, man. And then later, Freddie Freeman hits a home run, and that's a big deal.
Yeah.
He's a big deal to Atlanta. He did a lot of great things there. He was the face of the franchise.
And Dansby was still on the Braves.
Absolutely.
But I will never forget when Soler hit that home run in Houston, and the look on
in Game 6?
Yeah, the fans' faces, they're all like,
yeah, jaws on the floor.
Yeah.
He hit it so hard he almost fell down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you don't have people banging trash cans and stuff,
right,
in Houston, it just goes to show.
But you just look at Eddie Rosario. When we picked him up, you and I talked about this off mic before. He was hitting under 200.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you see in this guy? And then he goes and wins the NLCS MVP.
Do you know that year he hit for the cycle on 4 pitches?
No way.
Yeah.
Ha.
He hit for the cycle
Fun
with
fact.
4 pitches. So pretty much the first pitch he saw.
So we go out, we lose our biggest guy,
Yeah.
We go out, we get a streaky guy in Rosario who got hot at the right time.
Yeah.
We go out and get an absolute monster in Jorge Soler.
Yep.
And Jorge ends up winning the World Series
Soler
MVP.
had a 195 batting average when the Braves acquired him.
Yep. Who wants that?
And he ended up hitting, I think, like 300 the time he was with the Braves.
Yeah, and he ends up winning the World Series MVP, which is a huge deal. He'll go down infamous for that. So, yes, 2021 was a great bounce-back year. I think the 2020 NLCS against the Dodgers, losing in Game 7 was so monumental to me because it was the COVID year. The year sucked. I wanted a win, some kind of win that year.
Yep.
And we lose by 1 run late in the game, and and it's in Dallas, and there's nobody there,
and
so it's just soulless.
And I think the Dodgers went on to play the Rays of all teams.
Yeah,
in the World Series, which the Braves probably would have beaten them too.
Yeah,
scoff. So it is what it is. But that was a tough time for everybody, and at least they had some baseball, something, because man, COVID was. Those years were tough, Those 2-3 years, they were difficult. And we were able to have baseball, and we had a whole entire football season.
Yep.
And I think we only missed college football. I think they only missed 2 or 3 weeks.
I feel like that's right. I think some teams played more games than others.
Yeah.
Some of the teams out west only played 7-8 games.
Yeah.
We only played 9 or 10.
And it depended on if a team got ravaged or not, with COVID. But just to have an NLCS was a win,
right?
And to figure it out and to have people there. Now they were only playing them in one ballpark because of logistics, and a lot of cities had shutdowns,
airports,
airports and stuff like that. So to keep them all in one spot where you could test them and control who's going where and what and all that. But I see where you're coming from, and that is as great as the 2021 team could have been. The 2020 team could have been even better.
Yep,
but it wouldn't have been as special in 2021.
I agree.
And I prefer them win it with fans and the atmosphere that they won it under than to go out and win it with no fans.
Absolutely.
And I see where you're coming from. Being sober for as many years, I did have an issue with alcohol earlier in my life. And it was easier to cope with a lot of things, including sports losses.
Amen.
When you were drinking. But being sober all these years, it makes it more difficult because it's like, man, I just need another cup of coffee after that.
Right.
I need some caffeine.
You feel the real, true, raw emotion being a sober sports fan.
Yes.
For those of you out there, Cory and I I'm pushing a decade. I think you've made it over the hump.
Yeah, it's like let's see, I've been married 13 years, so it's about 15
Yeah.
15 years.
I got
15 years
9.
in September.
So being a sober sports fan, if you're ever looking for a challenge for mental fortitude,
Yeah.
being a sober sports fan is much like being a sober carny or a roadie, somebody that has to deal with things that give them anxiety all the time. It's a rough life to live. I highly recommend it, though. You really get in touch with your feelings.
Yes, and for anybody out there that has an issue, whether it's an addiction to drugs, alcohol, whatever it may be, any type of addiction, get help.
Yep.
Because if it wasn't for people that cared about me stepping up and making me get help, who knows where I'd be today.
Absolutely.
But get help. There's no shame in admitting that you have a problem. There's no shame in admitting that you need help. But sports is an outlet in a lot of ways, and we're talking about heartbreak, and we're talking about a lot of memories that we probably have pushed way, 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 way down, and want to forget about. But it's good to talk about it. This is almost kind of like sports therapy in a way, if you think about it. But get help. There's no shame in it at all.
You can 24 hours a day. You can contact Evoke Wellness.
Yes.
866-899-2192. Again, that number is 866-899-2192. Evoke Wellness helps with addiction, recovery, anything like that. People are out there. There's more people to talk to these days than when we were younger. So if you need somebody to talk to, you don't have anybody in your immediate life, man, get on the internet, ladies and gentlemen. Sober Life's the way to go.
Listen, or you can listen to us, And,
Absolutely.
And if you know us personally, or even if you don't, you can always reach out, man. I will tell you my story, and I will listen to your story. But just know that no matter what, people out there do care about you.
Absolutely.
On a lighter note, I guess it's number 1 for me.
What's your biggest heartbreak of all time, my friend? Having a successful marriage means that your biggest heartbreak can be a sporting event.
Yes, yeah, because there's no heartbreak with my marriage. I think in a lot of respects, I think she puts up with way too much from me because I am probably not the easiest person to live with, and she is a very clean and very thorough person. I'm not that I'm messy. I just have a certain way that certain place I put things.
It's messy to her.
Yes, very, very much so.
Yeah. Life's all about perception, right?
If you want to be successful in your marriage, marry your opposite because it's an adventure. And I've grown a lot in the 13 years that I've been married, but she might think that I've regressed. I don't know. But having kids throws in a whole different thing, and she'll tell you she's a mother of 3.
Right, I bet.
She's got our 2 boys and then me. And I promised my oldest son that I would give him a shout out. So, hey, Cameron, but going into this, it's, speaking of which, Cameron, you need to go to sleep. It's bedtime. It's like 9:30. Go to sleep. Tell your brother it's night time. Don't give your mother any problems because I don't want to have to deal with it when I get home.
Love you, mean it.
Yeah, exactly. Heartbreak. Number 1 heartbreaking game. Can you take a guess?
Was it a Super Bowl?
No.
It
is a playoff game.
It is a playoff game. No, man, I'm going to this opossum.
So, let me take you back to 2003.
Ooh.
A 2003 American League Championship Series Game 7.
Oh.
Yankees, Red Sox. This is before the 04 season. This is number 1. Game 7. Does the name Aaron Boone ring a bell?
Ding, ding, ding.
Because Aaron Boone, who is the manager of the Yankees now, will forever be known for this game. So this is I don't care who you are, this is the rivalry in sports. Yankees, Red Sox.
Absolutely.
People will argue Dodgers and Giants. People will argue Eagles, Giants, or Eagles,
Dogs,
Cowboys.
Yellow Jackets.
Yeah.
Georgia, Florida.
Yeah. This is the sports rivalry. Forget Michigan, Ohio State. Forget all of that. Yankees and Red Sox was the first.
For over 100 years now.
It all started because the Red Sox had Babe Ruth, who was a pitcher/outfielder. He was Shohei Ohtani before Shohei Ohtani. And he was hitting, pitching, and then playing outfield on his off days where he wasn't pitching. They had him. They won the 1918 World Series with Babe Ruth. Their owner, Harry Frazee, decided he was going to dabble in the arts and try to fund a show called No No Nanette, which is the biggest piece of crap. I will never, ever see that play, ever. Biggest piece of crap. I've never even seen it, but I'm just going to tell you it's a piece of crap.
Not watching it.
So No No Nanette was this show that Harry Frazee, who's the owner of the Boston Red Sox, was trying to fund. So what does he do? He takes his best player and he sells him to the New York Yankees.
Ooh.
And to this day, people say that this is called the curse of the Bambino, which started, an 86-year drought for the Red Sox. But in that time period, we had our opportunities. 86 happened. And if I was alive for 86, 86 would be the number one thing where Bill Buckner couldn't even get a ground ball and it went right through his legs.
Oof.
And then they're up and down roller coaster. They make playoffs, but, they never really do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But then this team rolls around, the 2003 team. And this is the team that was the bearded hillbillies that would go on in 2004 to win. This team was stacked. You had Johnny Damon. You had Nomar Garcia Parra. You had Manny. You had David Ortiz, who they acquired at the beginning of this season. Kevin Millar, Trot Nixon, Bill Miller, Jason Varitek. They had Timmy Wakefield. They had Pedro Martinez. They had Mike Timlin coming out of the bullpen. This Yankees team was stacked, too. Alfonso Soriano, Derek Jeter, Bernie Williams, Hideki Matsui, Jorge Posada, Jason Giambi, Roger Clemens, Mike Mussina, David Wells, of course, Mariano Rivera, Aaron Boone. Let's set this game up. Pedro Martinez starts the game. He actually goes to seven and a third of innings. So 10 hits. He gives up 5 runs, 5 earned, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts. Dude gave up 5 earned runs in 7 and a third innings. That's kind of weird. This was the game where Grady Little, who was the manager, he gets fired after this game. He left Pedro in too long. And Grady Little will get fired, and they hire Terry Francona the next year. Alan Embry comes in, shuts the door. Mike Timlin comes in. Then they bring Tim Wakefield in, the good old knuckleballer, to pitch the 11th. On the other side is Roger Clemens. He starts this game. He goes 3 innings, giving up 6 hits, 4 runs, 3 earned, 1 walk, and a strikeout. So they touched him up a little bit. Then they bring in Mike Mussina to pitch another 3 innings. He gives up 2 hits, strikes out 3. Then Felix Heredia, Jeff Nelson, they come in, they shut the door. David Wells comes in, and he gives up a run. Trot Nixon hits a home run off Clemens. Millar hit a home run, and then David Ortiz hit a home run in the 8th inning off of David Wells to tie it up. So in the 11th inning, they bring in Tim Wakefield, the knuckleballer. And so Aaron Boone came in the game in the previous inning as a pinch runner.
Okay. And
so they're going to pinch hit, or so he comes up. And at this point, I remember I'm sitting there, please, God, please don't be a Yankees fan. God, I know you're a Red Sox fan. I know you are. Please, just let us have this one. If they just go to one World Series in my lifetime, I'll be happy. And right after I said that, he hangs a knuckleball, and Aaron Boone absolutely crushes the ball.
Oh, my God, bro.
Destroys this pitch. And it breaks my hat to this day, just watching that ball, and it just sailed. And, the way that they showed it, it just, you just see the ball, and you see night sky, and then you just see the stands in Yankee Stadium, and it's I cried. I literally cried. I just turned 17, 2003. So, yeah, October 2003, I just turned 17. I'm almost a man. I'm almost an adult, and I'm crying because I thought that was our best opportunity.
Absolutely.
And it was gone. Aaron Boone? Give me a break. Who is this guy? I know his brother is Brett Boone, who was a great second baseman and was a great player, but give me a break. And then to top it all off, his brother is a guest color commentator for this game.
Oh, man.
And watched his brother hit this home run. And I'm livid. Like, I remember throwing stuff. I'm in my room watching this game because I had a TV in my room. And I'm throwing pillows. I'm throwing anything I get my hands on. I'm saying, I'm telling the Yankees everything I feel and everything I think about them. All this pent-up rage that's been instilled into me from my family on my dad's side, they live in Massachusetts to this day, my dad's side of the family, not my dad. And they just tell me about Yankees and how much we just despise them. They're the bad guys, But after this, the script flipped. The 2004 ALCS happens. And it looks like the same old, same old. The Yankees just destroy them the first 3 games. And then Poppy ends up just winning 2 back-to-back walk-offs, and then Game 7 happens, and the Red Sox just destroy them. It's not even close. Then they go into that World Series in 2004 and destroy the Cardinals. They had no chance. They swept them in four straight. But the reason why this hurt so bad was because I thought that this was our best chance. I didn't know that it was kind of like with the Braves and the Dodgers. I didn't know next year was coming.
Yeah,
and,
how could you?
And the next year it hurt so bad too. And it was like, oh, but I cried. And this reason why it's number 1 was because all the emotion, and I cried. I didn't cry during the Super Bowl where they lost their undefeated season. I didn't cry with the Bush Push game, but I cried here because this was my ultimate fandom. My number 1 team. This hadn't happened to me. I mean, I'm a huge Braves fan at this time, too. I've already seen the Braves win a World Series in 95. The Red Sox, never having anything in my lifetime until now.
Right.
At this point, they lose this game. Grady Little take a hike. We bring in Terry Francona. The 2004 team was a magical team, and that team was actually struggling. And then you have to remember the Yankees went out and got Alex Rodriguez in 2004. And then there's that game in Boston where Alex Rodriguez gets hit by a pitch, and he's mouthing off to the pitcher, and Jason Varitek just comes out of nowhere, and I think A-Rod shoves him, and he just shoves him back, and the teams are fighting. The Red Sox went on a huge win streak after that, and that's what turned that team around. And then the ALCS comes around, and they lost like 19-8 in Game 3, and you're like, it's over again. And this is worse than the year before because they're going to get swept. But it didn't happen, and they ended up winning.
Right.
And it was great because both my grandparents were still alive at the time.
So they got to enjoy it.
And my grandma was a huge Red Sox fan.
That's great.
And so she got to see it, and he got to see it first time ever. So when my grandparents were dating, my grandpa, he's dressed to the nines, dressed in his striped suit and everything. Got the flowers, coming up. All swag, knocking on the door, thinking, hey, I'm going to be taking Alice out on a date tonight. She's sneaking out the back door, going to Fenway Park to see the Red Sox play. She's like, I'm not going on this date.
That's classic.
And it was weird because my grandpa wasn't really a big sports fan. He tolerated it because of my uncle and me, and he gets so mad watching baseball games. So Nomar had this routine where he'd step out of the box and adjust his gloves, and he's just get back in there and hit the ball.
Yeah.
You adjust your gloves and bang your bat. Just stop and hit it used to aggravate him watching baseball. But for them being from New England, being from Massachusetts, especially my grandma being a big Red Sox, she had game programs from like the 1940s and 1950s when she was a girl going to these games.
Right.
So for her to be able to see that was incredible. And then, she also got to see all the Patriots stuff, but she used to call Tom Brady her boy.
Yeah.
She was like, I had to be home to see the Patriots game. He's my boy. If they played Sunday night, she'd always go to sleep after Jeopardy was over with. And she would stay up just a little later to watch the Patriots games. So wouldn't watch the whole thing, but just a little bit later to watch the Patriots games. But for her to see that, for my uncle to experience it, and I remember when the final out of the World Series was made, when Keith Folk handed the ball off to Minkiewicz at first base, my dad and I are in his living room, and we're leaping in the air. Like, I literally leaped. My dad, he leaped up in the air because even though you're not my dad wasn't a sports fan. You're from Boston. You're from Massachusetts. You hear about it. You hear about how bad the Red Sox are. You hear about how bad and how much they struggle, and it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It is crazy.
It is insane. I think if we can take anything away from this episode, it's going to be that, after tragedy or something dramatic happens in your life, give it a year. Just wait till next year. You never know what might happen. You might win a World Series. You just never give up. The Braves lose that 2020 World National League Championship Series to the Dodgers, and then they turn around the next season. They lose their number one player in Ronald Acuna Jr., and then Ronald Acuna is the locker room guy all of a sudden, and the Braves go on to win a World Series. And that brings me to my number one heartbreak of all time is the 2018 College Football National Championship, where the Alabama Crimson Tide decided at halftime they had another quarterback who was in a better position to win this game, and he proved it. The Georgia Bulldogs went into halftime winning 13-0. We felt pretty good, but I don't feel like any of us thought it was over. They come out of halftime, true freshman quarterback Tua Tagovailoa and defensive tackle Darren Payne were respectively named as the offensive and defensive player of the games. And Tua got his, the overtime. We're just going to talk about it. Second down. You get sacked for a 13-yard loss. It's 3rd and 23. What do? You just drop back and throw it as hard as you can to the Heisman Trophy winner, Devontae Smith. And I'll never forget it. 2018, my roommates and I are in the living room. I'm the only football fan in the house because that game was at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So if I had been home, I would have been there. I'd have cashed in my life savings. And January 8th, 2018, my two roommates and I are in the living room. Neither of them are football fans. Yeah. One of them calls it sports ball. He does not even care. He doesn't know a team name or nothing. I think he keeps up with basketball, and he's an excellent basketball player. Shout out Patrick if you ever find your way to this podcast. He was the homeowner, so everything was possible because of him, and he probably is the one that kept me even keel. Even though it was aggravating to hear him say, man, it's just a game. I'm like, no, it's not just a game. Yeah. We just lost the national championship in overtime to Alabama. The team, if I were to ever use the word hate, it would be to reference the University of Alabama football program. I hate Alabama. So Georgia's winning, out of nowhere, here comes Tua slinging the rock. We didn't prepare for a pocket passer. We prepared for Jalen Hurts' RPO style, and here we are. Game plan's out the window. Now we're flying by the seat of our pants. We only score in the third quarter. They shut us out in the fourth. We go into overtime. We can't get in the end zone, and we kick a dang field goal.
Yep.
And we're like, defense, get us out of this. But on the other side of the ball, you have eventual NFL starting quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa, and you have Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner, lined up far left in single coverage. Are you kidding me?
Yep.
That when he let go of the ball, I knew it.
Mm-hmm.
The Heisman, he won the Heisman. He's going to catch that football.
Oh, yeah.
And he had our DB beat by 6-7 yards. Anytime I see that highlight, because they roll that highlight all the time in like a sports reel introduction to a show or something on Fox or ESPN, you can see it roll through in the background. And I understand that is probably one of Tua's biggest moments of his career. I mean, true freshman comes out of halftime and beats the Bulldogs, the undefeated Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? So the semifinal before that was, the best college football game ever played, in my opinion.
Was that the Oklahoma?
That's the Oklahoma game. I went to that. I was at that Rose Bowl. So what I'm saying, we can talk about being down and losing that game 26-23, but the game before it's a wonder we had any stamina left. We played a double overtime game. At kickoff, it was 94 degrees, and at the end of the game, it was in the high 50s.
Oh,
Pasadena,
man.
California don't play. Okay?
I'm telling you, I've actually been to a game in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
so,
it's
I
something
know.
special.
Yeah, it really is. Like, it's one of those cathedrals of the game.
It really is.
I mean, they played what? They played one of the first Super Bowls there, I think.
I'd have to look at it, but that sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think they played one of the first 3, I think, there at the Rose Bowl. But this was Jake Fromm, right?
This is the 2018. This is Jake Fromm.
Jake Fromm, Nick Chubb.
Yeah, Sony Michel.
Yep.
This is the two-headed monster in the background.
Yeah.
Shout out to Nick Chubb. You are my most favorite running back of all time. And we touched on the GOATs of college football a little bit in episode 2. I just want everybody out there to have no misconceptions. My favorite running back of all time is Nick Chubb. I may have said I think the GOAT is Marshall Faulk, and that is because if you watch him play and watch what he did, he was a part of a team called the Greatest Show on Turf for a reason.
Well, this guy I've known this man for a couple of years, and this man named his fantasy football team after Nick Chubb.
Yeah, the Hot Chubb time machine.
So, yeah, to say that he is a Nick Chubb fan is an understatement. How good would that guy be if he didn't get hurt?
Have you seen him on Instagram lately? He's already squatting more than 500 pounds. Nick Chubb, may not be human.
If I squat 500 pounds, it's me doing something else.
Hey. But you look at Georgia, January 1st, Rose Bowl. I'm out there doing Electric Daisy Carnival, New Year's Eve party, and the boss, the owner of my company, comes to me and he says, "Hey, we're not working on the 1st." I'm like, "Cool," because it's New Year's Day. And he's like, "No, because I'm an Oklahoma alum and I'm going to the Rose Bowl. Do you want to go?" And I was like, "I actually intended on calling out sick because I've already bought my tickets."
Yeah.
So, you're talking how many 20, 30,000 fans are there pregame walking around the golf course, and however many fans are in the stadium. I physically run into my boss. He's decked out in Oklahoma with his younger brother. I'm decked out in my
Boomer
Georgia
Sooner
gear.
all over the place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's there with his daughters. They're having a great time. We kind of gave each other the head nod, like, good luck. This is going to be one for the history books. 54-48 final after
was
double
Baker
overtime.
Mayfield?
That's Baker Mayfield. That's Hollywood Brown.
Yep.
So the overtime 2-point conversion where it's a pass to Baker, before the Philly special.
Yeah.
They practiced that play 100 times in pregame because they practiced in the end zone right in front of me where I was sitting. And I was sitting next to a granddaughter that's an Oklahoma alum and her grandmother who was at a Georgia alum. Great-grandmother.
Wow.
So great-grandma is 2018 was her year. She was like, I'm getting up in years. I don't know how many more Georgia football seasons I got. But she hadn't missed a game since like 63.
Wow.
Period. Not even birth of children and grandchildren missed a game. Not a wedding, nothing. So before the game starts, after pregame, she and I have talked over her granddaughter so much that they just switched places.
Yeah.
So I got to watch this game with a fan who had been a Georgia Bulldog fan for like 6 decades at this point. And she nudges me as Baker runs into the locker room after he caught the last pass. He was starting to do it pretty. He jumps up and catches it one hand like Odell Beckham and looks down and toe taps. And she goes, "He's locked in. They're going to call that.
Yep.
They're going to get us with that." And there were no Bulldogs on the field at the time. There were no coaches out there. We weren't doing special teams at that point. So we never saw it coming. We didn't pregame for it. I don't ever remember seeing it in the regular season. I watched a lot of film on Oklahoma before that game with my boss because we were going back and forth because it was like, this is it. If Oklahoma's going to make a natty in this generation of football, it's going to be this team because Baker's the guy. And they just couldn't finish. Sony Michel was too much at the end of the game. They line up in the wild dog, and he runs it in.
So this is really the last championship for Alabama then.
Yeah, beating Georgia. That was the last one, 2018.
That was the last one. So that this is kind of the end of the dynasty for them.
Mm-hmm. Saban's gone. Yeah, they bring in, what's his name, from Washington.
Yeah, well, this
coming season.
This coming season, but this 2018, this was the last championship for them, and then it's all downhill from there. Yeah, they win some SEC championships and stuff, but they get smacked by Clemson, and that really is the end of it for them.
Yes.
They have some other playoff, semifinal games and stuff like that, but this is it. this is it. This is the last ring for Nick Saban. So,
And, right around the corner after COVID, you got NIL deals. You have transfer portals, and everything starts changing. So,
and like we said last week, NIL is the reason why I think Nick Saban retired.
I agree.
In this game, and I understand why it hurts you. Knowing you personally, I know why, because you're the biggest Georgia homer I know.
Yes, sir.
But you're seeing this game of Nick Saban and his eventual guy that's going to replace him as the top coach in college football. And there's a reason why Kirby Smart is the highest paid head coach in college football.
Absolutely.
And you're seeing a new dynasty with Georgia. And people are going to hate on Georgia. They already started to, but people are going to hate on Georgia because of this. But yeah, I knowing you, I know why this is your number one.
That is, I didn't sleep that night.
Yeah.
I woke up the next day and went upstairs and started making breakfast with the fellas, and it wasn't the same, and they were almost standoffish with me, and they didn't really want to console me. They're not sports guys, but they could tell. It looked like I had been broken up with, you know? And they're like, man, you need to go do the X, Y, and Z, whatever it was that made me happy.
You were broken up with that hot blonde, you know, that really hot blonde that you had a great run with, but she just broke your heart.
Yeah, in overtime.
Yeah.
Broke my heart to absolute pieces. And I think another thing was I was so far away from any other Georgia fan, being in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
I couldn't go out to a bar where there'd be a bunch of other dog fans where we could console each other, and kind of get through it. Because as a dog fan and going through the Mark Richt era, we always felt like it was a building year. We never felt like it was our year. We always said at the end of the year, maybe next year, but 2 or 3 games in, we were like, yep, this ain't the feeling. Yeah. But that Stetson Bennett season, you talk 2021, we felt that game one.
Oh, yeah.
I really feel like Clemson.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, it was Clemson. And that was a low-scoring.
Mm-hmm. And it was now, 10-3. Opening game of the year, Georgia's ranked first, Clemson's 14th, and Clemson turned out to be kind of a nobody. But we were at the end of that game, we were like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? Are we going to be able to do this? And then Stetson has a coming out party 2 or 3 games later, and JT Daniels gets benched. It's a game changer. That season from Jump Street, I said just a second ago it felt different, but now I really remember, and looking at the box score, the beginning of that season in September of 21, it felt like every other year. We're going to win 10 games. We're going to get to Alabama in the SEC championship. We're not going to get our shot.
But it's been different under Kirby Smart.
It has.
It just doesn't feel like that. It was always with Mark Richt, you're like, oh, man, we're doing so great, but then a Missouri comes in and kills you.
Exactly.
And then that's it.
And then the 2021 first round of the playoffs, that halftime speech that Kirby Smart gives, I can't play it on our podcast because it's inappropriate. Shout out Kirby, though.
Yeah.
Every time I listen to that, I want to run through a brick wall.
Yeah.
I'm ready to put my helmet back on.
That's what a head football coach should do.
Absolutely.
But I think we did a pretty good job covering heartbreak.
I do too.
But it goes to show you that on the other side of heartbreak is triumph.
Absolutely.
And happiness and joy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny that all the games we covered, except maybe the Bush Push game, those teams came out and won, literally the next year, a couple years later. So that's kind of crazy how that happens.
You get there, you taste it, and you didn't get to have dessert. You had to leave before the meal was over. You want to go back.
So in the next couple weeks, I think we're going to cover. We got a request about, I guess it was specifically Dale Murphy, why he's not in the Hall of Fame. But I think we're going to cover players that aren't in the Hall of Fame and should be over
multiple
all the sports.
Yes, sir.
And I think you'll be surprised at some of the names out there. And then we're going to try to line up another guest. Shout out to Kevin Ellison last week. He did a fantastic job. If you haven't seen that show, go back and look at it. We actually did video for that show, so it's on YouTube.
There's a low-quality audio version of it on the Facebook Live. It's just the show. Our page hadn't been out long enough for us to go live from the show, so I went live from my personal page, and then I just shared it from our Facebook page. we want to look into finding you guys a easy way to get to us. So if you've got any feedback on how we can get to you and be user-friendly, we're now on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube.
We got all the places covered for your ear holes.
So if there's somewhere you listen to podcasts and we don't cover it, you let us know and we'll get to you.
But we would also like to hear from you, more topics, maybe some, if you know of anybody who would love to come on the show that has a sports background or anything like that, hit us up, let us know. But we will take your feedback. This show today was from a request, and next week's show is going to be from a request too. So keep the requests coming in, and we'll do what we can to research them and cover them.
Thank you guys for sticking in there with us. I'm Jay Stone. With me always is Cory Champney.
Yeah.
And remember, it's not always about winning and losing, but it is always about how you podcast it. We'll see you next week on It's Just the Show.